All right, so it's 3 p.m. and we are all set to begin with our today's webinar. A very warm welcome to all our participants present here today. In a world that often glorifies strength as an impenetrable fortress, the concept of vulnerability may seem counterintuitive. However, true strength lies not in building walls around our emotions, but in embracing our vulnerabilities with courage and openness. It is through vulnerability that we find deeper connections with others, foster empathy, and discover our authentic selves. In this webinar, we explore the transformative power of vulnerability and how it can lead us to a stronger, more resilient existence. HRAI welcomes you all to the 2023 Dialogue Masterclass series on the topic Strength in Vulnerability. To know more about HRA and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. I request all the participants to kindly follow the webinar guidelines mentioned in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We will be running a poll before the Q&A session. I request all the participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege to introduce our esteemed speaker for today, Sumit Agarwal, DE&I Ambassador of HRAI. Sumit is a remarkable DEI ambassador driving change through diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a LinkedIn top voice of India, he sparks crucial conversations on disability inclusion, reaching millions. With over 100 workshops, Sumit empowers diverse audience, fostering a more inclusive world. Resilient and determined, he shatters barriers and inspires positive transformation. You can follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Now, without wasting much time, I now hand over the platform to Mr. Sumit. Over to you, Sumit.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, and Fairalji. Um, I am not supposed to be alive today. I survived 4 major surgeries. I was born with cerebral palsy, and the doctor said he's not going to survive. I was put in an incubator for 2 days. People thought that I was dead. That is why I consider life to be a gift. Each day that you wake up is a gift, right? When I started learning about life, when I grew up, I began to know that I am different than other people. I had to survive 4 major surgeries, one after the other. I learned the concept of mortality very early in my life. I understood that you have a very limited time in your life, and whatever you do, it must create a positive impact around you, around the people you have, because if you try to do things alone, it will not make an impact. Just to demonstrate, if all of you could join me in doing a small exercise, try clapping your hand with one finger. Doesn't make an impact. Now, if you do it with 2 fingers, still there's no impact. Now, if you do it with 3 fingers, still there's no impact. But the moment you put 4 fingers, there is some impact. And the moment you do it with 5 fingers, there is a sound which shows that united we stand, divided we fall. I was rejected from 30 schools. They told me that you don't have a place to belong. You don't belong in the mainstream curriculum. You will not be able to cope up with it. Please go to a special school, because those schools are for people like you. I still remember the wording they used. These schools are for people like you. My mother took a pledge that day. if my son is studying somewhere, he is studying in a quote unquote normal school, and he will receive a mainstream education just like other people. Otherwise, he will not study. Which brings me to my first point. Strength comes from the foundation of values which are given to you by your immediate surrounding, family, and friends. I learned the true meaning of resilience from my mother. If she had given up on me that day, I wouldn't be here today. Because of my mother, I was able to pursue a mainstream school education. Then people told my mother, don't let him get into higher education. Higher education is not for people with cerebral palsy. My mother said, I will do everything in my power to see that he gets a higher education. I got my MBA with a 9.05 CGPA. I topped my university. Right? Because if you are driven by preconceived notions of what a person can and cannot do, that will impact your life. Which brings me to my second point. Strengths come up when you're not living a script which is handed down to you by other people. Make your own life, make your own story, and just listen to the opinion of others, but don't let other people tell you what you can or cannot do. Because in the HR and DEI space, we deal with bias. We deal with unconscious bias, we deal with horn bias, we deal with conformity bias. There are so many biases that a person has. And if a person is telling you that you cannot do this, the person is coming to you from a place of bias. So don't let other people project their bias on you, because only you know what your true capabilities are. Which brings me to the third part of my story. When I was not being able to cure myself, my family turned to other methods of cure and hope. She took me to an astrologer who said, I will not live beyond 25 years of age. Today, I am sitting here. I am 31. The astrologer is not here anymore. So if you look at predictions people make about you, life is very unpredictable. Nothing is sure. The only thing which is consistent is your grit, determination, and resilience. That is what makes the difference. Which brings me to the third part of my life journey. When I was going to get a job after my MBA, I was rejected by multiple companies. They said, we don't have a place for a person like you. You are not able to walk, you are not able to stand, and you have a degree in marketing. How will you, a person who cannot walk or travel, go and sit beside a client and market the company? When you are representing the company, you must be perfect. So disability, my dear friend, have always been seen as a vulnerability, as an imperfection, as a thing that we need to get cured of, right? Why, pray tell me, everyone says that, okay, you have a disability, you need to cure it. A person might have a disability and might be happy with his life. We need to accept that disability is just a part of our lives. It doesn't define our whole identity. When I was rejected by multiple jobs, I said, you can keep your jobs. I don't want to be a job taker from the society. I want to be a job giver to the society. I started my own LinkedIn agency, and now I have over 30 clients in over 6 countries. I've got over 100 million views. And that, my dear friends, is the power of resilience. If you put your mind to it, you will be able to achieve anything you want. Now, let us talk about why this happens. Predisposed conditioning of our mind that people with disabilities are vulnerable people. People of old age are vulnerable people. People with LGBTQ are vulnerable people. But I feel that vulnerability is a great strength. It makes you different from others. It makes your story different from others. And it allows you, from a perspective of equality, to learn other methods of how you can succeed. It allows you to have a different story, at the same time advocating for equality and equity. So the conditioning of the mind is such that people with disabilities are not able to perform this, they are able to perform that. They are not able to do this, they're able to do that. So if we stop putting people in boxes, right, we will be able to understand and drive people with disabilities to become a power for economic contribution. Now what we are doing is we are checking boxes. Under diversity and inclusion, I need to make sure 2% of the entire company workforce are people with disabilities. So what you're doing is you're just hiring for the sake of hiring and making the workforce a diverse workforce just for the sake of doing it. But true inclusion lies in the factor that if they're vulnerable at a certain point, can you convert their vulnerability into a strength? By that, I mean, do you have accessible tools in your company, helping people to use those tools to work in the company? Do you have sign language interpreters in the company for somebody who has a hearing difficulty? Do you have ramps in the company for wheelchair users? Do you have quiet rooms in the company so that somebody with autism can go and sit in a different corner when they have too much information to process? Do you have nap rooms in the company where people with disabilities, if they want to take a break, they can take a break for 5 minutes so that they can be productive? Do you have adequate representation in the company marketing materials and branding materials so that you support the vulnerable communities to reach to a certain point where they feel represented? Do you have the essence where you're able to create ERGs so that they become self-sustaining? All of these is true inclusion. Not just taking people in, but training their co-workers, but retaining them for a longer time. Asking them, do you prefer to be called a person with a disability, or do you prefer that we use a different terminology? If you ask people that what they want in life, And these changes, mind you, getting a RAM, getting somebody who's a sign language interpreter, these aren't very costly changes, but the kind of impact it brings to the table, that really helps you gain a momentum in the diversity and inclusion. Because when we talk about DEI, we think that it only covers gender for most companies, but there is LGBTQ and there's disability. I don't think these issues should also take a back seat. I think DEI issues are of all equal importance and should be treated accordingly. So, when we talk about communities, we have to look at what empowers them. We have to look at what drives them. We have to look at what is the cultural history of the community. And we have to look at what we can do to make the community sustainable so that they can grow, strive, and thrive. There are a lot many companies who are not even aware that there is now 21 types of disabilities according to the RPDW Act from 2016. So first thing is make yourself aware, educate yourself on how many disabilities are there, what is the history of LGBTQ, why are people practicing ageism, right? All of this will help you become a better and a diverse company. From my life journey, I can tell you that when a person has a disability, it not just impacts them. My mother was a successful lawyer. She had to quit her job so that she could support me. And there is no provision that guarantees financial stability for the caregivers of people with disabilities. Because if somebody becomes a caregiver for a person with a disability, you are not able to devote your entire time to work. That also happens in case of a lot of people who have grandparents at home and they need to take care of their grandparents, right? There, essentially, what I feel is the factor that drives DEI is empathy. And empathy should come from a place of human heart and not laws and legality. If you are there to check boxes to make sure that your company is compliant for being a DEI pioneer, I don't think that really helps you from a perspective of strength. You are just doing it for compliance. So what I would request to everyone watching me is when you talk about DEI, talking about it from a place of heart, not from a place of compliance. And you will see empathy drives success and DEI. With this, I would like to thank HRAI for having me here. I would like to keep it short. If there are many questions, I would like to answer the questions. I hope that with my talk, a lot more people would be open to hiring people with disabilities, not just hiring them, but give them a place where they can belong and where they can stay for a long time. Because hiring is just the beginning, retention is key.
Thank you, Sumit. Very rightly said. So before we move on to the Q&A session, we'll be running a poll. So request all the participants to kindly share your feedback. While doing so, request all the participants to kindly post their questions in the chat window. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all the participants who have joined our session today. We have received numerous inquiries about the e-certificate provided by HRAI. To claim your certificate, simply share your details, name, and session attended via email to the address provided in the chat window. Please ensure that you do this before the end of this month. Once we receive your information, we will promptly email you the e-certificate. Thank you for your participation. So, Mr. Sumit, we are having some questions that had come up from the registrations. I'll just like to call it up. The first one is, in what ways can vulnerability be a powerful tool for building deeper connections and relationships with others? Is the question.
I feel that if you let go of your walls that you have around you, you are being your authentic self. And with so many social media platforms, with so much information around us, with so much comparison that we have at our fingertips, that okay, this person is doing well, that person is doing well. When somebody is vulnerable, you know, and says that no, I also have similar problems that you have, and I am also going through the same experience that you are going through. I also have the issues that you have. You open up your heart to the person and say that okay, he or she is not alone, or they are not alone. And then you are able to create a community. For example, a mother once reached out to me and said that, okay, Sumit, through your LinkedIn posts, I was somebody who was working sometime, but I had to quit because I have a son with autism. But through your posts, now you have given me hope, right? So this way you are able to foster a feeling, and you are able to create a community that becomes a driving force for anyone you are trying to empower.
True, true. Very good. We'll go to the next question that is related to this, which is, what are some common misconceptions about vulnerability as a weakness, and how can we shift this perspective?
See, today's date, I think social media have played a rampant role to make vulnerability a weakness, right? People are living lavish lifestyles, perfect life, all smiles on social media. Nobody shows their fights at home. Nobody shows their but they're not talking to their friend, or if they have any issue that's going on at home. We all must project smiling faces and everything on all of our social media platforms, right? So in the process, we have lost authenticity, and that has come from a place where you're not able to make deeper connections with people. The moment you make deeper connections, you will realize that okay, these all are superficial things, these doesn't matter. So that is the entire process. You must be at peace with yourself to be vulnerable. And the misconception is that vulnerability is a weakness. Vulnerability, you will think that vulnerability is a weakness when you're not trusting the person enough. If you trust somebody, yeah, and that person trusts you back, I think vulnerability is one of the most powerful things in the world. I was not earning enough, right? I was not earning enough few years back, and I was at a very bad phase of my life. I'm saying this online in front of everybody, right? I opened up to a lot of people on LinkedIn about it. They told me what to do. They showed me the ropes, and they suggested me ways that these are the ways that you can come out of it. If I chose to hide my situation and say that no, everything is hunky dory, everything is fine, then probably I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, very beautifully answered. We go to the next question, that is, are there cultural or societal factors that influence how individuals perceive and express vulnerability? And how can we create a more accepting environment for vulnerability?
Yes. In India, in a country like India, where we have diverse cultures, diverse religions, we have a place where we have different foods, different clothing. Like it's like every state is in itself a different culture, right? We are all united, but we have different tastes and preferences, right? If you look at Kolkata, it will probably be Rasagolla. If you look at other states, they have their own famous foods and clothing and cultural styles. So naturally, parenting styles are also very different. If you look at India's rural population, a lot of them are still um, how to send their daughters to school, and talking about these issues, right? So if you educate people and if you create safe spaces, for example, small discussion circles, right? Inner circles, right? Where you can create a safe discussion group, maybe 4 or 5 people where you trust, whom you trust. And these people can discuss their issues among themselves. Like companies have ERGs, right? So ERG is a safe space. ERG for disability, ERG for LGBTQ. It's a safe space where people can open up and discuss. But the thing is, they have to come forward. So once you are able to come forward, once you gain the trust of somebody and you are able to create a safe environment, I think it works the same in all cultures, right? Empower people, gain their trust, and create a small circle where you can discuss and solve issues one by one. What happens is in these ERG circles or any other circle that I've seen, people meet once a month and every time they take up a different issue, but they don't take feedback on whether the previous issue mentioned by somebody was solved or what is the status of that issue, right? So feedback here is a very important method of communication where you're able to gain data as well. Okay, this is how this person dealt with XYZ problem. This is what person did when he was faced with XYZ problem. That becomes a case study, which we can refer to. Right? So, so all of this, referring to case studies or data on what a similar person did when he or she or they were in a similar situation would really help you create safe spaces.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you for answering all these questions so beautifully. We'll go with one last question looking at the time. It is, how can vulnerability help break down stigmas surrounding mental health and encourage more open conversations about emotional struggles?
I think when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right, they are the most vulnerable communities that we have. When somebody is from the LGBTQ background, they have a battle ongoing with themselves. That should I open up to my parents? Should I open up to my immediate relatives? Should I talk to this about my siblings? Who should I talk to where I should not feel judged, right? So there should be again safe spaces for mental health. Now, when I talk about mental health, there should not be any stigma of seeking professional help, right? Till date, there are a lot of people who suffer from mental health issues, but they refuse to visit a psychiatrist or a psychologist just by the fear of getting judged. They don't want that, okay, their family should know that there is something wrong with them. I feel that people should discuss these issues more and more so that talking about it becomes a norm. When you discuss, you increase the awareness. When you increase the awareness, you are empathetic towards people who face these issues. For example, if somebody that has dementia and you don't know what to do with that person, but if you have heard somebody previously talking about somebody with dementia and you have their contact, maybe you can call them and get a guideline or a guide map. Okay, now my immediate family member has dementia. I don't know what to do. You please advise. So there should be resources by companies as well, that if you are suddenly having XYZ issues in the family, how can you deal with it? There is no universal standard for dealing with issues, but if there's a guide map, it helps.
Thank you. Thank you, Sumit, for this insightful and intriguing session. The webinar was incredibly inspirational, and I appreciate the depth of knowledge you brought to the subject. Your passion for the topic was evident throughout the webinar, and it made the session all the more engaging and inspiring. So before we conclude for today's session, we would also like to thank our event partners, Geisha, NASCOM COE, LinkedIn Local, Talgro, TLE, and WICCI for supporting these HRAI events. To know more about them, request you to kindly visit the link provided in the chat window. Thank you once again, dear speaker and our participants, for joining us today. Do join us for our next event on Connecting the Dots next Thursday, 3rd of August, 2023. That's it from our today's webinar. See you soon. Stay safe. Take care and bye for now. Thank you, Sumit. Take care.
My pleasure.